Today, in languages you may not have heard of, I'm going to talk a little bit about Sardinian. Sardinian is spoken in the island of Sardinia. See, that is Sardinia. It is just south of Corsica, and like sort of to the southwest of Rome. Now, Italy is actually a multilingual society, as you might already know. It is, obviously Italian is spoken, but it's only fairly recently become a unified country, just in the mid-19th century. And the result of that is there are all sorts of languages spoken in Italy, and one of them is Sardinian, which is spoken on a relatively small island, which you will be absolutely shocked to know is called Sardinia. It is a Romance language and is known as the language that is closest to Latin that is currently spoken. And we're going to look at some videos that introduce us to the language, get an idea of what it's like, and and just show you some resources if you want to learn more. So this is Sardinia. It takes about 3 hours to get from north to south, so it's kind of on the same size as Ireland, but it's also extremely mountainous. So, well, I don't know about extremely, but very mountainous anyway.
Hello,
and I'm going to be dropping these links
Sardinian course for beginners. First of all,
into chat.
Let me thank you for being here and showing interest to the closest language to Latin still spoken. Sardinia
and
is
also
about
into
the
people
and is
description when I
natural
turn this
beauty,
into a YouTube
the
video.
magnificent sea, and the hospitality of its people. Before we start, let's talk about all the languages that are currently spoken in Sardinia.
Yeah, you heard that right. Languages. Because the thing about mountains and islands is their language diversity incubators. When you've got a mountainous area, you can be guaranteed you get some interesting linguistic diversity. I mean, it's wherever you go. Like Austria, they speak the language different every 10 kilometers in the Alps because the Alps are there. It causes a certain amount of isolation, and people start to, languages start to diverge in interesting ways. I mean, same thing, like if you go to Korea, also very mountainous place, and you get all sorts of different ways of speaking, and of course the most divergent way of variant of Korean that is spoken is Jeju-do, which has not only got mountains, but it's also off on an island. And so you get a lot of that. Of course, there's the Caucasus, which is a region that is just famous amongst linguists because it's just an explosion of different language families and different languages and stuff like that over a very small region. All sorts of very diverse and interesting languages spoken there. And so on this relatively small island of Sardinia, we have all sorts of different languages spoken because it's also full of mountains.
Logudorese is considered as the standard language and is mainly spoken in the central part of the island. Nuarese dialect is a harder and older version of the Logudorese and is mainly spoken in the mountainous inner region of Barbagia. Campidanese is the most spoken variety, and people use it in the Campidano lowland and in the south.
Which is interesting when you think about it, because the standard variant seems to be spoken over a relatively small area compared to Campidanese.
Though these three idioms are mutually intelligible, they may differ significantly one from another. They all derive directly from Latin. Other two languages are spoken in northern Sardinia, but they've both been filtered by Tuscan dialects, Sassarese and Gallurese, which are similar to the Corsican language.
And then Catalan, of course. Like, why wouldn't you? Just to make things even more interesting, you've got... This just happens to be an area where there's just a little area where Catalan is spoken as well.
You'll also find other linguistic minorities such as Catalan in the town of Alghero and Genoese in the island of San Pietro. In this course we will learn the basics of the lower Logudorese dialect, spoken around the area of the Lake Comodeo, which is an ideal bridge between the three main varieties. So, let's begin!
Sardinian flag.
The numbers. Uno, duos.
Notice this is something that is very similar to Spanish too. You get a lot of the plurals end in s's, which is totally different to Italian, where they change a vowel mostly, or there isn't a separate plural form in some cases. But in Sardinian, you get uno, duos, tres.
Tres. Battono.
Okay, what the hell just happened there? Because the whole rest of the word sounds kind of like cuatro, quattro, gatto. But then a B in the beginning. Well, this is a thing you see in Romance languages, and not just in Romance languages, where there's this divergence between like a Q sounds and P sounds, and this is a voiced P sound. You also see this, incidentally, in Romanian, where it's patru. And in the Celtic languages, this similar thing happens with the numbers which are Latin derived. So you have pedair, pedwar in Welsh, and then it's like cahar in Irish. And in fact, they used to divide the Celtic languages as P Celtic and Q Celtic, specifically because of this thing. Now, 5 is gimbe. Well, where we've got two interesting things about it. First of all, the chi, it becomes a hard k, but then cinque, quinques in Latin, that we have another, the qu, que, becomes a b.
Quimbe. Sese. Sette. Otto. Noe. Dege. Everyday speech. How to introduce yourself. If you wish to introduce yourself in an informal way,
That's
just
so much
say
better than line.
Salude. To
That's
answer,
pretty familiar.
Simply repeat Salude. If you want to tell your name, say Minaro Antoni.
Naro, like narrate, narrar, narrare, narrer.
Or Minaran Antoni, which literally translates as I'm called Antoni and they call me Antoni. Or you can also say Su nomine meu est Antoni.
Su, because one of the other sort of interesting things that Sardinian does, that I don't know of any other Romance language that doesn't, is that instead of using an L in their articles, they use an S. So instead of il nome in Italian, or le nom, el nombre, or o nome in like Sicilian or Neapolitan, it's su nomine, su nomine. Yeah, that will look familiar if you've ever studied Latin, because nomine, nomen, nomine, and yeah, so su nomine meu
means my name is Antoni. If you want to ask someone's name, say Commente di Narasa or Commente di Narana, and answer Minaro Elena or Minaran Elena. To ask how do you do, you say Piacere meda.
That's
or,
that's not so much asking how do you do as saying how do you do when you're introducing. Piacere me da. So my pleasure. It's, as in pleased to meet you, not how are you doing.
Meda piacere, which literally means a lot of pleasure. Tip of the day. When you are offered a drink, it is polite to accept without too many pleasantries. Sharing food and beverage is an important feature of the local hospitality.
And the wine, the Sardinian wine is really good. We're going to see some more phrases, and we're going to look at some more of the features that distinguish Sardinian, Sardo, from other Romance languages. This is for Italian speakers. But you can see the nice thing about that is we get the Italian and the Sardinian adjacent to each other, they're juxtaposed. So look, pillole di sardo, pills of Sardinian. I don't know why they're called pills. But in Sardinian it's pindulas. Pillole, pindulas. Ok, però chi non conosce sa limba sarda? Sa, note, not la, sa. Limba. Now, this is, in Romanian, again, that is the word for language, limba. Yeah, we have lingua, and that gua becomes ba. Cunoscet. So we have the hard C, once again. Conoscet instead of conosce, which is again very much a Latin thing to do.
Pro chi non conosce sa limba sarda. Prosistranzu chi queret intrare in intro des...
Queret, which if you speak Spanish is familiar because that's the same root as quiere, querer.
La cultura sarda.
Zarda.
Pro chi quere conoscere paragulas novas.
Paragulas.
Pro chi estima sa limba sarda e a piacere della pensare a sa matessima manera
Estimat.
desosateros.
Now that's interesting.
Pindula.
Because see, that's in the Italians, per chi ama la lingua sarda e ha piacere di condividerla con altri. Ama, amare, to love. And in Sardinia it's estimat, which is like from like estimado, esteemed. And there's another language that does this, and that is Catalan, which just happens to be a language that for historical reasons that I'm not going to get into because actually I only just found this bit out today and I haven't had a chance to look into it, that I don't know. So Catalan is spoken in the northwest of the island. So, I mean, clearly there's some mutual influence going on here if estimat is the word for ama.
Las de sardu.
Imparamus, amus, again, a very Latin thing.
Imparammus su sardu. Sa limba sarda in pindulas.
The Sardinian language in pills. And again, I'm going to be dropping these links in the description and in chat. And I'm going to drop this video link in here into chat as well.
Pindula 1.
Pill number 1.
Benevenios a imparammus su sardu.
Benebeños. Notice the V becomes a B. Venuti. Beños. And the uti, that is the plural masculine right there. Ios. Which is again a similarity to Spanish as well. And that's not going to be coincidental either, because actually when you get down to southern Italy, you have areas like Naples, for example, that were under Spanish rule for a fairly significant amount of time, and so Neapolitan and Sicilian, for example, do a lot of Spanish things that Italian doesn't do. Here we look, vocabulario, with a B again, benebeños, vocabulario. So we have a VB shift going on, which is interesting. I'm going to have to listen more carefully because I'm wondering, does this mean that this is one of those Romance languages like Spanish, where the V and the B are actually kind of hard to tell apart?
Chi custar lesionese ha da imparare a favedare sa limba sarda.
Okay, what's going on here? Quien custas lesiones haces a imparare. Haces, I guess that is like to have? Because the future in Romance languages often is a compound from the verb to have. For example, you look at in Spanish, for example, aprenderé. Aprender e. To learn, I have is where that originates from. Same thing with imparerete, which is you will learn, plural, you. Haces a imparare Favedare. Parlare, favedare. And now that's interesting because see that double D in lots of southern Italian languages, like Sicilian's another example, double L becomes a D sound. And see in the vulgar Latin origin of hablar, for example, to speak in Spanish is fabulare, like with the same root we get confabulate from. Fabulare. And what do we got here? Favedare. Fabulare, favedare. And we've got a BV shift again here too. Salimbasarda.
Cercai de ripetere sempre a bocche arta zuchinaro deo.
Oh, okay. Kirkai. Kirkai. So we got that hard C, soft C going on here. Ripetere. The I is, see, it's an I there, it's an E in, same stress pattern though. Sempre. So there's an extra syllable there, and alta voce, out loud, alta, arta. Now this is another thing you see a lot in like variations of Romance languages, like in Roman Italian, the alta also, the L in alta becomes arta as well. And actually in like working class Chilean Spanish, one traditional thing that happens is that the L, especially this sort of post-vowel L, like this al, becomes ar. See, I geek out on this stuff because I'm a Romance language buffin, and I hope that I hope I'm encouraging you to be fascinated by Romance languages as well.
Pompiai bene in ube rugene sos accentos.
Pompiai. Okay, I have to say, I'm really not certain what's going on with pompiai. Bene in ube. Ubi in Latin. Rugene. Not actually sure what a rugene, where that's coming from, but accentos. So it's like it's halfway between Spanish and Italian here. Accentos, accenti, accentos.
Sos pronomenes.
Pronouns.
Tue, issu.
Okay. So again, here we go. Pronomenes, which is another. It's a very Latin way of saying pronomini, pronomine. And in in Italian it's pronomi, in Spanish pronombres, and here pronomenes. Deo. So you get an extra D at the beginning of it, which is interesting to me. Because I don't think there's another Romance language that actually sticks a D there. Due, issu, notice egli, el, issu, s. This shift happens all over the place. Isu, but on the other hand, eso, esa,
Issa.
in Spanish.
Nois, bois, issos, issas.
Quinsos pronomenes circamus da facere, facere, fare, hacer, facere, again with the hard C, carchifrase.
Quinsos pronomenes, circamur de vacere carchifrase.
Da vacere. Listen to that again.
Quinsos pronomenes, circamur de vacere
Vacere. So this voicing, like you notice when he says susardo, the S at the beginning of sardo becomes a Z. It becomes voiced. And here too, devacere. Not defacere, but devacere. The F is becoming voiced there. And I don't know any language except, like, I guess you could say some of the Celtic languages with their consonant mutations that does this sort of voicing of an intervowel. Actually, wait a second. I do. Because the F in Welsh is a V sound. Always. And you basically only see it before, and you almost always see it only in an intervowel position. Almost always only. That is a really weird collection of qualifiers I've just put together. So, but devacere. That is interesting.
Qualche frase. Deos o mastro Antoni, tu eser mastro Elimna, issu er
Tu
mastro
ese.
Muru.
Issu est mastro emuru.
Noi
Carrales.
semus carrales, voi sezis.
I wonder if that's from carnales. I wonder if that's a cognate. Like, one way of saying, like, somebody is close is carnal in a number of variants of Spanish. So, see, you just look at it. Setsis, siete, sorres, sorelle. And sor in Spanish, for example, is like a sister, as in an order of nuns. Fradiles, cugini.
Sorres,
Sul.
ipso sum fradiles. Deo appo una berbeche,
Berbeke. And one thing, pecora, which is a sheep. One thing that Sardinia is known for is their pecorino sardo cheese. It is a cheese related to pecorino romano. They're both sheep's cheeses, but they taste different. And I have to say, pecorino sardo is good stuff. There's if you live in Bristol, there is Sardinian food to be had near the King's Head. Place called Marco's Olive Branch, which I quite like, and opposite Paddington Station in London, I seem to remember getting some very nice Sardinian food as well. And their red wine is also amazing.
tu arduos caballos,
Gabados. Wait a second. What was that B sounding like?
Deo appo una berbeche, tu arduos caballos,
Tuear dos cabados. So, cabados, the L becomes this D sound again. And the V becomes a B, like caballo. Except that caballo, in Spanish, the B and the V are very hard to tell apart. In fact, a lot of the time they're identical.
issu ha tres terrinos. Nois ammur battor aneddos,
Battors. Notice that the gender of battoro changes. Well, the number, it becomes battors aneddos. Instead of battoro, battors. Kimbe domos. Fizzos.
vois azes kimbe domos, issos han 8 fizzos.
Otto vizzos. There we get to see the thing with the F again.
Sor verbos principales, essere, aere.
Aere. Also interesting to me because in Chilean Spanish, you also get this V disappearing the way it does here. I personally, I just absolutely love, idiosyncratic languages that are like way more archaic than the rest of their family and preserve all sorts of features that you don't see anywhere else. And I hope that I've managed to, that this has fascinated you as well.